The biggest success that Indian cinema has ever seen, the biggest success of your career.
Yeah, I like Jadagi Chappi because that's what people remember. Jim's lines are a delight to write. I mean, look, there's nothing more fun to write than lines for a wicked character.
Is Abbas getting back to direction? Because you keep getting asked this every time you meet the press, perhaps. Is that something you miss, or is that something you look at doing in the future?
As an Indian, as just somebody who's part of the film industry, as a viewer, I think that joy is actually might be a bit more.
बल्लेबाजी के लिए पठान तो आया. क्या कर सकता है?
Abbas, welcome to India today. Let me begin with a big congratulations. I have a lot of questions lined up, but first let's congratulate you. The biggest success that Indian cinema has ever seen, the biggest success of your career. What does the success of Pathaan mean to you, Abbas?
I think the success of Pathaan is gratifying at two levels. One, as a professional whose work is being appreciated, your directors pleased, your producers pleased, your actors are pleased. So just success at an individual level, right? It's always wonderful when that happens. But beyond that, to feel part of something that's becoming more than a film, becoming somehow a celebration, becoming a festival of sorts of people remembering that they can be joyful and that they can be warm and they don't need to be edgy, they don't need to be angry all the time, and just having fun, right? And in that sense, it's not just as a dialogue writer, but as an Indian, as just somebody who's part of the film industry, as a viewer, I think that joy is actually might be a bit more than just the fact that okay, a film that you wrote did well and people like the dialogue. That always feels good. But this is special. It's something very different.
Definitely, absolutely. This does feel special for so many reasons. I want to share with you my takeaway from the film. When I watched the film and I have interviewed Shah Rukh a couple of times and I've met him, I did feel that the banter, the way he speaks to Deepika, or the way his take on life in general in these little scenes that you get to see, did feel very Shah Rukh-like. It did feel like, his wit, his candid banter, when you sit with him, or his take on a lot of things. Was that your take on writing the dialogues for Pathaan? The fact that you wanted to retain that Shah Rukhism in him?
Well, I have interacted a little socially with Shah Rukh many years ago because I've done a couple of films with him. But I was not coming so much from the personal persona of Shah Rukh Khan, but I was celebrating the star persona of Shah Rukh Khan, what Shah Rukh Khan stands to his viewers and to the people who gather outside his house. And so I did not, I wasn't trying an insider's take because I'm not an insider in Shah Rukh's life. I've been invited to the odd party when I was doing Mehuna and Ashoka for his companies and stuff like that. Or I've met him at a few common friends' places, but I haven't seen him be all out Shah Rukh in person. But we have all seen him be that on stage, on screen, in his interviews, just the way he interacts with people. This is brilliant, larger than life quality. And I'm sure it's very similar to his real life persona, but a lot of it is also just inculcated. He's chosen. If ever there was a man who chose to be a superstar, who decided to be a superstar, it didn't happen to him. He chose, right? I remember very early on Shah Rukh giving this interview when he was nowhere near a big star yet. And he was explaining how stardom requires a style that even a child can mimic, and was giving the example of Rajesh Khanna, and it's like even a child can mimic him. All the truly great actors and stars, right? So he goes, I'm not just here trying to be a good actor. I also want to inculcate a style, that people can mimic and can imitate. Because that's what started. So he came in with this with a sense of destiny. It's remarkable. You don't see that too often. So I was celebrating that persona of stardom rather than any insider friendship with it.
Right. Recently at this press conference to celebrate the success, Shah Rukh shared his favorite dialogue from the film. And that moment where Ashutosh Rana interacts with John and he says monster, and then John just goes oof. And Shah Rukh said that what a brilliant take that was on Jim, who's John's character. What is your most favorite line in Pathaan?
Yeah, I almost never able to think in terms of favorite lines. I suppose that you find your favorite line after a while, based on what people hold on to, and that you develop a nostalgic affection for. So, if you had asked me in the week of the release of Munna Bhai MBBS what was my favorite line, I don't know what I would have said, but after all these years, I can say, yeah, I like Jataki Chappi because that's what people remember. Karen Romano Juice. So, whatever people hold on to, that makes it special for you, not the fact of how it sounds, but what people remember, what choose to make people smile, what people, sort of what makes people smile and what they choose to remember. So I guess once we are a few months away from it, and there will be 2 or 3 lines I think that will stay on because people have really enjoyed the dialogue of this one. It's very, very wonderful to say. So that's when I'll find out what has connected to the with the people in a way that has lingered on and still gives them a smile every time it's referred to.
I was chatting with Sridhar a while back, and I was talking to him about how these Easter eggs pop up about war right from the beginning of the film when he says "Ghungru toot gaye," and then as the story continues, we get to see.
Actually, that might be one of my favorite lines. I know people have been caught up with a lot of other lines, but that point where he has broken this thing and drops the metal and
yes,
Ghungru toot gaye, Rafe, Nach. Yeah, I personally as a dialogue writer, that gives me a kick.
Absolutely, it gave all of us a huge kick in the theaters. We were like, "Did you just catch that?" We were all looking at each other, and that's what Sridhar said. He said that is the genius of Abbas, and that credit is totally his. I want to speak to you a bit about the fact that now that the spy universe is coming into place, right? We are getting to see the beginning of it. The blocks are falling into place now. And like I said, there are a lot of mentions, like how you have in the Marvel universe. Marvel fans literally sit and wait, or will they refer to this superhero, that superhero?
Right.
How has been your experience of approaching this new concept that Adi has thought of, that the world that he's come up with, and you collaborate with him, right? Yeah. Has this been also a learning experience for you to sort of look at writing in a different way?
Look, where it came to war, for example, there was still no concept of an integrated spy, Yashraj spy universe or anything of the sort, right? So while writing war, we were just trying to write the best possible film. When Pathaan happened, the integration was still at a very, it was still just a concept that was building of possibly having a universe around these wonderful characters that Yashraj has created and these mega stars that they ended up casting. So we were actually just cognizant of a first step that, all right, so we are bringing Tiger in to Pathaan because we want to start off the sense that they will crisscross in each other's lives, right? And Colonel Luthra is coming from war, so that also underlines the fact that war is part of the same universe. So except for the fact that this is what going forward Yashraj will be doing, and as the first film to do that, here are some of the things that we will do. There's Colonel Luthra, there's Tiger. So again, the concept was not so fully developed that they crisscrossed in the sense of any major characters being common to both or anything of the sort, right? It was still just casting the dice, so to speak. So one did that, but like I said, the possibilities are endless, but the possibilities are really known, I suspect, right now only to Adi. And I'm just glad that I was part of a couple of them. And I just hope that they're happy enough with my work where, as and when, if and when they are making more, they will, sort of consider me to be part of it.
Right. And the one big scene that everybody's talking about, and it has been the most talked about scene in cinematic history in the last few years, is the Shah Rukh Salman sitting on top of a train having that banter. Yes. And Sridhar was telling me that this is again Adi's genius idea, and he sort of came up with this. I want to speak to you. Did you work on this scene as well? Did you also get to collaborate on this particular scene?
Look, I myself didn't know that this was Adi's doing. Right, I just knew that it was very much brought to me at the level of the script. I put in the final words, which is what I do. Right. initially, when we wrote it, it was not written as this kind of a cheeky anticlimax. It was actually written to occur right after Pathaan and Tiger have somehow fought their way out of that train, somehow survived all those Russian goons and the burning chopper and everything. And now they're sitting there waiting to be rescued by their own chopper. And this conversation was supposed to occur then, right at the end of that scene. So Tiger comes, he helps Pathaan, and then as a goodbye while they're waiting, we had a little funny scene because we were aware it's Shah Rukh and Salman. So have
Yes.
some fun, and then the story was supposed to carry on. Where it struck Adi or Siddharth or whoever came up with this brilliant idea of removing it, because you realize they're both dressed in the same clothes, they're in the same condition that they were in after the fight. So it's
Yes.
obviously occurring there. It's not later. It's not after the story. It is occurring at that point. But so and it was shot like that. So I just think that it's a brilliant editorial decision and a very fun cinematic mind whoever came up with that one. And if Sridhar says Aditi, he probably knows. This is all they're doing. I may have put in the words just making sure that they sound right, but this kind of ideation is all them.
Right. And there's also this very interesting philosophy, the Japanese philosophy of kintsugi that Pathaan speaks about early on in the film, which is to join broken pieces with gold. And it sort of becomes a thread through the film of where he's coming from and what the film is also trying to do. How did that play out for you? Because that's a very new approach to see it in a film like this, and it does play out really well. That is one part of the question. The second is, how much did you really get to, were you on set? Are you somebody who also likes to go on set because you've written it maybe in a certain frame of mind and you would also want to share that with an actor when the take is happening? Or what is your style of working in this?
Let me answer the second one first, and then we'll come to the first one. My first film as a dialogue writer was Ashoka. And it is the only film, besides anything that I've directed, obviously, it's the only film where I have written on the set or been on the set. I learned everything I needed to learn about never being on set from Ashoka, because what happens is that when you're in the heat of the moment, you get an idea, it will always seem better than your previous idea, only because it's fresher. And because you're doing it in a rush, you're shooting a scene that day and you write it in a different way, you haven't factored in how many other things it is affecting. And
Right.
it still makes sense with all the connections that you had made sense of the previous scene, but now you've gone and changed it and you haven't had the time to sit back and say, oh, this affects something in the beginning, this affects something in the end of the film. There's an impulsiveness that I find destructive to the process. I find dangerous to the process. So I explicitly do not get involved with the film unless there is a locked dialogue and I'm not required to be on set. I'm never on set on any film.
Okay.
Right. So if the director knows exactly what he wants and is brilliant enough as Sid is to get what he wants from Sridhar, to get what he wants from me, to get this whole team together, to get the kind of action that he wants, to get the kind of photography that he wants, to get the music that he wants from Vishal Shekhar, I think it is safe to trust him with actors and let him interpret how he wants them to say it, rather than worrying about the tone in which you wrote it, right? So you communicate to the director and then let him communicate to the actors. There's no way that the writer should be on set saying, this is what I intended. It would not be constructive at all, and I would encourage all young writers to avoid writing on the spur of the moment. Please write well in advance and be sure of what you've written. About the whole kintsugi concept, that is very, very inbuilt into the story and the screenplay. Whether it came from Siddharth, whether it came from Sridhar, whether it came from Adis or whoever. But by the time the screenplay came to me, this idea of the broken pieces joined together by something that makes it even more beautiful than before, more rare than before, more valuable than before, that was already very much contained within it. So my job was quite simply to make sure, okay, this is a beautiful concept, it's a beautiful thought. Make sure your words are beautiful enough to communicate that beauty to the audience. So very often, you have to be clear on what the job is as a writer, right? In some cases, brevity is important. A screenplay works a particular way, and your job is to not get in the way of that with your words. In Pathaan, the brief was that the dialogues are a big part of this celebration, So you're given permission, and your brief is to write slightly larger than life dialogue where they are more memorable, right? So you'll see a great deal of restraint in war. You'll see a great deal of thera, where the dialogues are at no point trying to draw attention to themselves. But in Pathaan, very explicitly, Siddharth wanted a bit of a party with the dialogue, right? So my job is, okay, this sounds great, this concept is great, this idea is great, it sounds great in the screenplay. Let's make sure that the Hindi dialogue does not let this down in any way. Take it one step further if possible, or at least communicate its beauty. Nothing should be lost as a part of my process. That is what I try to do.
Right. And just as an audience member, somebody who enjoys watching cinema, do you have a particular favorite line of a Shah Rukh film? Or, I mean, there are so many of his, but maybe one that perhaps is not very popular, but probably you've taken to just as an audience member. Is there any line of his?
Well, listen, the kind of career Shah Rukh has had, it's not humanly possible not to have sort of, as soon as a question like this comes, not have 1,000 lines bombarding you. But there are just certain lines that he has delivered where there's just so much feeling, and they might not be his most memorable lines or most remembered lines. But for example, there's a scene in Chak De where he is trying to explain to Komal and Preeti how destructive their enmity is the evening before the final. And there's a line where he says, "Ke tum nahi seh sakte yaar," when that goes wrong, when you lose at that stage, koi nahi seh sakta. And the way he's built in this message of, I've gone through it and nobody can, you cannot handle that suffering. I didn't have a choice. But the feeling that he brought to the way he said that line, right? And I just said, besides being a star and a half, here's also an extraordinary actor. It's just that very often the persona of Shah Rukh Khan almost overshadows Shah Rukh the actor. But when you watch a movie like Chak De in particular, which I'm a huge fan, there's just so many lines that are just said with such brevity, with such economy of language, of choice of words. That's also the filmmaker at work. Like at the point where Bindya offers her body to Kabir in exchange of making her the captain, right? And she goes, "What's she got that I haven't? Why won't you make me the captain?" And he just puts her zipper back up and says, "I think you've just answered your own question," right? So to carry off that kind of economy, yeah, bombast and sort of loaded lines, he does great. But to communicate with brevity, economy, and the look that he brings when he's really, really trying to express something, I think that's what's the most special thing about him is for me personally.
Did you also have a lot of fun writing the lines for Jim, as much as fun we had watching him say them on screen? Because for me, Jim is such a revelation in the film.
Jim's lines are a delight to write. I mean, look, there's nothing more fun to write than lines for a wicked character, right? And in Jim's case, you have an extraordinary opportunity to write for a character that is almost sociopathic in his evil. His comfort with what he's doing, his absence of morality is so complete that he's sociopathic. But the degree to which a justification has been given about the reasons for him reaching that point from somebody who was once awarded for his country.
Yeah.
It's a very, very complex character. It's somebody who felt very deeply for his country, felt a very deep sense of betrayal and rejection, and has now become a sociopath, and his way of communicating that is by mocking everything. When you have such a juicy, complex character, again, it's a dialogue writer's dream come true to be able to write those kind of lines, because like I said, very often, especially with the slight new age filmmaking that has come in, where less and less people are trying for dialogue bazi, so to speak, which used to be the staple of Hindi films. So to once again be part of a film where the filmmaker and the producers wanted it to be a celebration of that, and to have characters like Jim and Pathaan and Rubai to write those lines for, and the character of Dimple, I just think that this is a very, very lucky film for me to be offered as a dialogue writer. I feel very grateful.
Absolutely. There's that scene near the swimming pool where John smirks when he comes out, and that's the moment when you realize that everything is going to change from here on now. And sometimes silences or expressions do much more than perhaps lines and words could. Was that also a way of looking at the film for you?
That is, any good dialogue writer has to realize that the right moment of silence is part of the dialogue process, right? So there will be times when in the screenplay, someone has written down 4 lines that they think that this is roughly what the character would say, and then you adapt it to Hindi as you would do in other scenes. But it's very, very important for a dialogue writer to be able to say, this works better without any lines at all. And not having dialogue is very much a part of the dialogue writing process. Communicating without dialogue, or communicating through a look, or even describing how something can be communicated through music or a cut or a superimposition of events, that is very much part of the dialogue writing process. The point is to maximize the impact of the story that's been handed to you. It doesn't always have to be only through words. It has to be through an understanding of what's unfolding, not just on the camera, not just visually, but also on the soundtrack. You have to be cognizant of both.
Absolutely. And finally, Abbas, now that we sort of dabbled our toes into the spy universe, and we are now going to see more and more, and we are obviously going to get entertained because multiple crossovers, possibilities, endless possibilities. What's next for you, and how involved are you going to be in the conceptualizing of all of this?
What's next for me is waiting for the answers to those questions, exactly like you. What's happening next in the spy universe? What films are being planned? How are they crisscrossing? And keeping my fingers crossed for hopefully some of them being offered to me. That's pretty much all I know right now. But I look forward to them as much as everyone else does. I think it's going to be a great ride.
Absolutely. I wouldn't doubt if your phone rings and you get calls to do the next films, because Pathaan has sort of set a benchmark and the foundation, I guess, perhaps for future screenplays and writers and dialogue writers to come in and take the story ahead. But congratulations, Abbas. And I quickly need to ask you, for all of those people who want to know, is Abbas getting back to direction? Because you keep getting asked this every time you meet the press, perhaps. Is that something you miss, or is that something you look at doing in the future?
Look, I always wanted to be a script writer, and I really wanted to hone my craft. Jane Tu happened I almost was blindsided because I was going through a bit of a writer's block and ended up directing it. And for a while, got swept up in all the attention and the fact that, frankly, it's a lot more recognizable, the role of a filmmaker, and it's better paying. So it doesn't hurt at all. But it's also a lot of work. It's also the ability to handle that many people, to handle the monies and the people behind the monies, to handle the stars and all that comes with that little joy of their personalities, to handle the egos of various technicians, and to handle the competence of 250 people, so that you can do your job. That's a very, very stressful thing. And I would no longer do it lightly. I would only do it if I had a burning need to tell a particular story, or there's a film that I really, really am dying to do. Then of course I would direct, but not because I want to be a director. That's just vanity. That's not a job, right? That's optics. So I will direct when I feel a compelling urge that this story has to be told by me. And for that, I'm willing to go through the suffering that the director goes through. Otherwise, I'm happy to leave the suffering to people who've got a lot more charm in public relations, like Siddharth, than attempt it myself.
Fair enough. I think that's a good enough answer. Till then, we will let you enjoy the congratulatory calls and messages that are pouring in your way for Pathaan. Congratulations once again. Absolutely edge of the seat, thriller, entertainer. People are watching it, discussing it on phones, on WhatsApp, on social media. I think it's a great time to be in the movies. On that note, thank you so much for speaking to India.
Thank you very much.